Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Yoma Daf Lamed Hey is primarily an Agadata Gemara. The Gemara quotes three people who were the prime example of tzidkis despite their potential challenges. One of them is Hillel, and the famous story of Hillel on the roof. The Gemara arrives at this because it begins immediately following a Mishnah which discussed the preparations of the Kohen Gadol to enter the Kodesh HaKadoshim. It talks about his clothing that he wore and where he went to the mikvah, and it mentions Rabbi Elazar ben Charsum, who was a Kohen Gadol who was very rich. So let's begin the Gemara immediately following the Mishnah, which said that the Kohen Gadol went to the mikvah on top of a chamber called the Beis HaParva. The Gemara wants to know why is it called Beis Parva. The Gemara says that Parva was the name of a sorcerer. Now the Gemara doesn't explain more than that. Rashi says the sorcerer named Parva built that chamber in the Beis HaMikdash. The Aruch explains that he actually tunneled under the Azar because he wanted to spy on the Avodah, and he went underneath this chamber, and therefore they named the chamber after him. Okay, next we said that when the Kohen Gadol enters the mikvah, they hold up a linen sheet in order that he should have privacy. The Gemara wants to know why did the sheet have to be made out of linen. The Gemara says that's to remind him that he's about to be doing the Avodah in linen clothing. You should have that in mind when he's going to the mikvah. Now, the Mishnah had also said that there were two sets of clothing. There was one set with which he did the primary avodah in the Kodesh Kadashim, that is the bringing in of the ketores and the sprinkling of the blood. And then, after he changed back to the golden clothing, and then he went back to linen clothing, the white linen, to take out the shovel and the ketores spoon. So there he put on a different set of clothing, also white and also linen, but that was less valuable. And the Mishnah had brought two opinions as to what their values were, and then it concludes, the second opinion was said that the first one was 18 maneh, and the second one was worth 12 maneh. A maneh is 100 zuz, but it was 18 and 12. The Mishnah says that the total is 30. So the Gemara says, what do you need to tell me that the total is 34? I can do math myself. The Gemara says that the point the Mishnah is trying to make is that the total has to add up to 30. It doesn't have to be 18 and 12. It could be a different ratio as long as it adds up to 30 or more. It cannot be less. So the Gemara says, how do you know, though, that the first set of clothing has to be more valuable than the second set? The Gemara says because when the pasuk describes the first set of clothing, it uses the word bad 4 times to show that it should be very high quality bad and not something less. The Gemara says, Akasha, the Navi Yecheskel describing the avodah of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, says that when he puts on the second set, it calls him V'lovshu begodim macherim. He should put on other clothing. Usually the term macherim denotes that there's something special about the second one, which sounds like it's on a higher quality. Why are we saying that it's lower quality? Versus no, that's not. It just means that it's different, but it could also be lower quality. Now, the Gemara quotes a Brisa, which has a related halacha. The Brisa says that the second set could be clothing that was made by the Kohen Gadol's mother. Very often, Kohanim had clothing made for them, and Big Tikkun that was made by their mothers. So Gemara says it's okay, the Brisa, the Gemara is bringing says it's okay if he puts on for the second set, he could wear clothing made by his mother, as long as he donates it to the Kodesh. It has to belong to the Tzibor, it cannot be his own. So it's okay if his mother made it, as long as he gives it to the Kahal. The Gemara says, what's the Chiddush there? If he's giving it to the Kahal, who cares who made it? The Gemara says, you may fear that he won't give it over with a full heart, because his mother made it for him. Therefore we say, we're not concerned about that. Now the Gemara refers to two Kohanim Gedolim who actually used clothing made for them by their mothers. The first one was Rabbi Shmuel ben Pavi. His mother made clothing for him that was worth 100 maneh, a tremendous amount of money, and he wore it, and then he did the avodah, and he gave it over to the ownership of the congregation. The second one, and this launches into the Agadata, is Rabbi Elazar ben Charsum, who was a Kohen Gadol, and he was also very wealthy, and he was obviously a tremendous Talmid Chacham. His mother made him clothing that was worth 20,000 maneh. 20,000 maneh, the finest fabric that could possibly be. And the Gemara says that the other Kohanim did not allow Rabbi Elazar to wear it. And the reason is because they said that it's actually such fine fabric that it's transparent, it's see-through, and you can see his skin through it, and therefore it's not tzenua, it's not appropriately modest. Gemara says, could you really see through clothing? It had to be so thick. Each strand that was woven to make the clothing had to be made from 6 strands spun together. That's a tremendously thick weave. How could you see through that? The Gemara says, yeah, you could see through thick things if they're transparent, just like you could see wine in a glass, even if the glass is made out of very thick layer of glass. Now the Gemara launches into a Brisa which discusses the Lente Agadata. And it says that there are three people that will be asked very pointedly by the Beis Din Shalmaila when they get up to Shemayim after their sojourn on the soil. They'll be asked, why didn't you learn Torah? And it will be the poor man, the rich man, and the wicked man, the Rasha, somebody who was involved in pursuing his more base desires. And they will ask them, why did you not learn? And they will each give an excuse. One will say, I was too poor, I was too busy trying to survive. The other will say, I was too rich, I was too busy taking care of my finances, which I incidentally used to support Talmidei Chachamim, that's why I didn't learn. And the third one will say, my Yetzer Hara was too strong, I was too beautiful, I was too attractive, and I found other people to be too attractive. So the Gemara says the answer to each of them will be from somebody who had that exact trait and yet managed to learn Torah very extensively. So for the poor person, we will hold up Hillel. We'll say Hillel Machayves Aniyim. Hillel takes away all the excuses from the poor, because Hillel was so poor, he used to work all day just to earn one tarpeik, which is half a dinar, a very small amount, and he would take that half a dinar and he would use half of it to pay the entrance fee to the Beis Medrash to go learn, and the other half he would use to support his family, a very minimal amount. Now one day he wasn't able to make any money at all. Interestingly, the Gemara doesn't say he was a wood chopper, although that's very famous. He couldn't find any money at all, he couldn't find any work at all, and he went to the Beis Medrash, he couldn't pay the fee, and they wouldn't let him in. So he went up and he lay on the skylight, on the roof, so they should be able to hear the words of Shammai and Avitalion, the leading sages, Talmidei Chachamim there. And he heard them, and Hashem brought a special snowstorm, and it piled up 3 amos of snow on top of him. In the morning, they came in, and they saw that the room was very dark, and they saw that somebody was on the skylight, and that's what was causing the darkness. They went up, they brought him down, they warmed him up by the fire, they washed him, they anointed him, they rubbed him so that he should return to restoration. And the Talmidei Chachamim commented to each other that this is going to grow into a great Talmid Chacham, and it's good that we were even Machal Shabbos. The next day was actually Shabbos. It's good that we were Machal Shabbos to save him. The Rishonim ask, you're supposed to be Machal Shabbos to save anybody. Why is that significant here? But we'll move on to the second, which was Elazar ben Charsam. The Gemara describes how wealthy he was. The Gemara says he inherited from his father 1,000 cities, precisely, that's not an estimation, 1,000 cities and 1,000 ships. And he was master over them all, and he actually never went to check on his workers at all. He hired somebody to manage all of it. They didn't even know who he was. He himself took a sack of flour every day, and he went traveling from city to city, from town to town, like it says in Kemach, in Torah, you don't have flour, how are you going to learn? And he would go and he would learn a Torah. Once he was walking through a city, and a bunch of foremen there found him, and they said, okay, we're catching you, and we're going to put you to work for the factory here that is owned by this town, which is owned by Rabbi Elazar ben Charsam. They didn't even know that it was him. And he said, no, let me go, I want to go learn. They said, we're not letting you go by the life. I mean, they swore, by the life of Rabbi Elazar ben Charsam, we're not letting you go. And that's who he was himself. So according to other sources, as Dot mentioned here, he paid them off to escape. But what we see from here is that they didn't recognize him. So he did not visit his workers, and he was busy learning Torah the entire time, despite his great wealth. It's not a reason to distract one from finding time to learn. And of course, the one who will say that he was too busy with his Yetzer Hara was too strong, or he was too beautiful, so we will say, are you better, are you more beautiful than Yosef HaTzadik, or did you have more Yetzer Haras than Yosef HaTzadik, who was in the house of Eshes Potiphar, the wife of Potiphar, who did everything she could to seduce him. The Gemara describes how she changed her clothing twice a day to try to attract him, and then that didn't work. She threatened him. She said, I'm going to lock you up in prison. He said, no problem. Hashem matar asurim. Hashem releases you in prison. She said, I'm going to put heavy weights on your back until you'll be stooped. She said, okay, Hashem zokif. He said, Hashem zokif kafufim. Hashem straightens the stooped. She said, I'm going to put out your eyes. He said, no, Hashem bakei chivrim. Hashem gives sight to the blind. Then she tried bribing him with 1,000 bars of silver, and he would not be bribed. He did not do any of these things. And it says she wanted Lishkav Etzla Lios Ima, to lie with her, to be with her. Lishkav Etzla meaning to be with her, to lie with her in this world, and Lios Ima to be with her in the next world. He didn't want any part of what she was offering, not this world and not the next world, and he recused himself. So therefore, there is no excuses for the poor. This concludes the daf, just before a Mishnah which continues the description of the Kohen Gadol.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.